Columbia University tells CBS News we condemn sexual misconduct in any form and extend our deepest apologies to the women whose trust Robert Hadden violated. Hadden did not immediately return our request for comment. CBS News investigative reporter Graham Cates joins me now. Graham, good to see you. You've been covering this story since 2018. In fact, you spoke to one of the victims back in 2018, who up until that time was the only one who had chosen to come out of anonymity to tell you her story.
Yeah, that's correct. And at that time, there were already 17 women who had joined a lawsuit against Columbia University related to Dr. Hadden. And now, of course, we know that that number has ballooned to up to 70, and it could still grow.
So tell us about the history of these accusations.
The lawsuit alleges allegations going back to the early 1990s. So we're talking 2 decades of accused sexual assaults. And so I'm sorry, but the cases that are so far public in terms of what he's pleaded guilty to are just two cases of forcible touching and sexual misconduct that were more recent, like within the last 10 years.
So let me ask you about these 2 tracks, because there's the one track which focuses on Cyrus Vance and his office here in New York City. And the reason that people are sort of eyeing them is because of the history with regards to Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein, and what they feel is justice that wasn't served, given that he lost his license, certainly, and has to register as a sex offender, but didn't serve any jail time, didn't even have to do any community servicing. And of the dozens of women who had alleged that he had assaulted them, they only used, I believe, 2 to eventually get the plea deal with Hadden. The other is the focus on Columbia University. So give me a sense of those 2.
Sure. So first there's Cy Vance. That's the one that's gotten more attention. When he was charged, when Robert Hadden was charged, there were 6 cases that came to the court, and he ultimately did a plea deal for 2 of them. Now, in filings, prosecutors said they wanted to hear from another 13 witnesses. So we're talking they had identified what they believed to be up to 19 victims. And then in the end, they end up doing a plea deal involving 2 cases. He never serves a day in jail. He had to forfeit his medical license, but he was also given the lowest level sex offender status in New York. That means that if you go on the state's registry and look him up, he doesn't even show up in that. It's more of a kind of a formality for background checks. And that's why there's so much outrage about this case, because here's a guy who never goes to jail, and again, is the lowest level sex offender. And now we're talking at least 70 women claiming sexual assaults. And that's because as an obstetrician in the Columbia University system, I mean, he had thousands of patients over the years.
Right.
And so the lawsuit says that Columbia knew about it going back to the earliest allegation they know of, they say, was the early 1990s, which means that there's this 20-year period where they say internally there are these complaints going in, and he's continuing to serve as a doctor. In fact, they said after he was first arrested on a charge, which was just in the last decade, he actually continued to be a doctor in Columbia's system for another couple of years.
That is remarkable. So how is Columbia University responding to this?
Well, they're not addressing the lawsuit at all. And then this goes back to when I first talked to them in 2018. They say that they feel sorry for the women, as we noted before. They say his behavior was abhorrent, but they never addressed the lawsuit or the allegations in the lawsuit that administrators turned a blind eye to this.
So you've spoken to at least one of the victims. How do they feel knowing that there are dozens more women that are alleging the same abuse that they suffered?
Vindication is the word that comes to mind, but I think there's more of a sense of anger about the fact that these are women. A lot of the women we hear from are women who were abused in 2010, 2011, 2012. And they're saying, why was I even able to see this doctor?
Right.
If it's possible that people knew about his behavior, even if they didn't know the specifics, even if they just knew that he was making women uncomfortable, dating back 20 years.
And it is remarkable also that Evelyn Yang, I think she, in some of the things that she's told CNN, is that she started to feel as if because of the fact that her husband had this platform that she would raise awareness of something like this. She said that she got the sense to do it when she saw how much support there was for their child who suffers from autism, and how people were just so open to them and supportive of them that she felt comfortable in coming out and alleging this. And then when she came out with her story, other women saw that story and said, oh my God, that happened to me.
Yeah, and it's hard to imagine that it's going to stop here. I mean, 40 women, and it's been a month yesterday that she did her interview. And so you wonder how many other people saw the interview or will now see the interview or hear about this and realize, I had a problem with this doctor, and now I realize that there's somewhere where I can go. There are people I can talk to try to get some sort of closure on this whole experience.
And finally, Graham, I mean, people are starting to use the word prolific with this doctor in that, have you heard, I know you've been sort of digging into it, with 70 women that have come forward and perhaps more that will come forward, this sounds to me as if a doctor, there's been no one who's done what he's alleged to have done.
Sure. The lead lawyer in this case calls him the most prolific sexual predator in New York history. I'm not sure that I can verify that exact title, but I certainly can't find a case in New York history with this many victims. And that said, look, I mean, right now, as far as the criminal justice system is concerned, there were only 2. And again, that's why so many people are upset about it. But we're beginning to see what is widening into what hopefully will be a very large investigation into all of the cases that this doctor treated.
Graham Cates, thank you very much for your reporting. I mean, again, I note that you were speaking to the only victim at the time back in 2018 who had come out from under the cloak of anonymity to tell her story. So thanks for your reporting on this. Graham Cates, thank you very much.